June 4, 1944, 150 miles off the coast of Rio de Oro, Spanish Sahara. The Atlantic Ocean stretches endlessly beneath a scorching West African sun. In these waters, a German Type 9C submarine moves through the depths, its crew unaware they are about to become part of history. Above them, an American hunter-killer group circles, guided by intelligence that has already decided the war's outcome. Within hours, a message will flash across the Atlantic to London, and British intelligence will face one of its most dangerous moments of the entire war. The words that follow will determine whether the greatest secret of the Second World War remains hidden, or whether the carefully constructed edifice of Allied code-breaking comes crashing down just 48 hours before the invasion of Normandy. The submarine in question is U-505, a vessel that has earned an unlucky reputation among German submariners. She has suffered through 6 failed patrols, endured the suicide of one commander during a depth charge attack, and returned to port damaged more times than any other U-boat in the Kriegsmarine. Her current captain, Oberleutnant zur See Harold Lange, is on his first patrol in command, desperately hoping to prove the boat is not cursed. He has no idea that Allied cryptanalysts have been tracking his every movement through decrypted radio transmissions, that Allied convoys have been carefully routed away from his hunting grounds, and that the very codes he uses to communicate with headquarters have been compromised for years. The ocean he believes offers concealment has become transparent to his enemies. By the spring of 1944, the Battle of the Atlantic has turned decisively in favor of the Allies. The dark days of 1942, when German U-boats sank merchant vessels faster than they could be replaced, are long past. New technologies, improved tactics, and vast resources have transformed anti-submarine warfare. Hunter-killer groups now patrol the mid-Atlantic, actively seeking out submarines rather than merely defending convoys. Long-range patrol aircraft have closed the air gap that once provided safe transit for U-boats across the Central Ocean. Most critically, though the Germans do not know it, the Allies have been reading their secret communications since 1940. Every order from Admiral Karl Dönitz, every weather report, every refueling rendezvous has been laid bare before Allied intelligence officers. The U-boats, once the silent predators of the deep, are now the hunted. Captain Daniel Vet Gallery commands Task Group 22.3, centered on the escort carrier USS Guadalcanal. Gallery is restless, ambitious, and unconventional. A Chicago native with the lean features of a Hollywood leading man, he has already proven himself by sinking multiple U-boats in previous patrols. But Gallery wants more than kills. He wants a capture. In the previous month, he watched as U-505 surfaced right in the middle of his task group, only to be blown apart by concentrated gunfire before anyone could board her. The experience gave Gallery an audacious idea. Before leaving Norfolk in mid-May, he assembled his destroyer escort commanders and proposed a radical plan. The next time they forced a U-boat to the surface, instead of destroying it, they would attempt to capture it intact. The crews practiced the maneuver, worked out the timing, designated boarding parties. Gallery wanted to bring home an Enigma machine and German code books. He believed such intelligence could change the course of the war. What he did not know was that the British had been reading German naval codes for years, and that his planned capture could endanger the most valuable secret in military history. At 11 minutes past 11 in the morning on June 4th, the destroyer escort USS Shetland makes sonar contact at 800 yards. The U-boat is so close that standard depth charges will not work. Shetland fires Hedgehog mortars, small projectiles that explode on contact. Aircraft from Guadalcanal join the attack. Within 7 minutes, depth charges crack the hull of U-505. Water floods the control room. Lange, believing his boat is doomed, makes the terrible decision to surface and save his crew. The submarine breaks through into sunlight, and immediately American guns open fire. Machine gun rounds rake the conning tower. One German sailor, signalman first class Gottfried Fischer, is killed as he tries to emerge. The rest of the crew scrambles into the water, having opened sea valves and started scuttling procedures. They expect their boat to sink within minutes, taking all her secrets with her. Gallery shouts the command that has not been heard from an American combat officer since the War of 1812. Away, all boarders. Lieutenant Albert David leads an 8-man party from the destroyer escort Pillsbury. They approach the abandoned submarine in a whaleboat, uncertain whether demolition charges are ticking toward detonation, whether hidden crewmen wait in ambush, whether the boat will simply sink beneath them. David enters through the conning tower. Inside, the submarine is a chaos of rushing water, scattered papers, and emergency lighting. The Germans have left everything behind in their haste to abandon ship. Charts cover the navigation table, codebooks sit in their storage racks, and there, in the radio room, are 2 Enigma machines. David and his team work frantically to stem the flooding, covering open valves, starting pumps. Within hours, they have stabilized the submarine and begun filling mailbags with every document they can find. 900 pounds of secret material. The haul includes an M4 Enigma machine set to current shark key settings, Kurd signal codebooks for abbreviated tactical signals, chart overlays detailing operational areas, weather codes, and patrol logs showing recent U-boat positions and encounters. It is an intelligence treasure beyond measure. Captain Gallery radios headquarters with news of the capture. He describes the coding materials in simple terms, not understanding their full significance. The message travels up the chain of command, reaching the highest levels of American and British naval leadership. The response is immediate and shocking. Gallery expects congratulations. Instead, he receives orders that make no sense. He is not to take U-505 to the nearest Allied port in French Morocco. He is to tow the submarine nearly 3,000 miles across the Atlantic to Bermuda. The reason for this bizarre directive is simple, though Gallery does not yet understand it. The invasion of Normandy is scheduled for the following day, June 5th. If news of the capture reaches German intelligence, they will immediately change all Enigma settings. Every ultra-decrypt, every carefully maintained advantage in the war at sea will vanish overnight. And the timing could not be worse. Thousands of Allied soldiers are about to storm the beaches of France, relying on intelligence that tells them exactly where German divisions are positioned, exactly how Hitler has deployed his forces. The entire operation depends on the Germans believing their communications are secure. In London, at the headquarters of the Admiralty, Admiral Sir Andrew Cunningham sits at his desk. Cunningham is First Sea Lord, the professional head of the Royal Navy, a position he assumed in October 1943, after a distinguished combat career in the Mediterranean. Known universally by his initials ABC, Cunningham is a fighting admiral in the Nelson tradition, aggressive and direct. He is commanded at Cape Matapan at Taranto through the evacuations from Greece and Crete. Now, at 61, he holds ultimate responsibility for British naval strategy. When news of the U-505 capture reaches him, Cunningham does not hesitate. He immediately cables Admiral Ernest J. King, the Chief of Naval Operations for the United States Navy. The message is marked with the highest classification. Its contents are blunt and urgent. The cable reads, "In view of the importance at this time for preventing the Germans suspecting a compromise of their ciphers, I am sure you will agree that all concerned should be ordered to maintain complete secrecy regarding the capture of U-505. Cunningham's choice of words is deliberate and careful. He does not say this is important. He says it is of importance at this time, emphasizing the unique vulnerability of the moment. He does not demand secrecy. He appeals to shared understanding, certain that King will recognize the stakes. The message is a masterpiece of diplomatic urgency, conveying the gravity of the situation without revealing the full scope of what is at risk. Behind those measured sentences lies the entire Ultra operation, the work of thousands at Bletchley Park, years of cryptanalytic achievement, and the lives of countless Allied servicemen whose safety depends on continued access to German communications. At Bletchley Park, 50 miles northwest of London, nearly 7,000 men and women are working in shifts around the clock. They labor in wooden huts and concrete buildings spread across 58 acres of grounds surrounding a Victorian manor house. This is Station X, the government code and cipher school, the heart of British signals intelligence. Since 1940, the codebreakers here have been penetrating German Enigma traffic with increasing success. The achievement required mathematical genius, engineering innovation, and industrial-scale organization. Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman designed the bomb machines that mechanically test possible Enigma settings. By 1944, over 200 bombs are running constantly, their rotating drums clicking through millions of combinations. Colossus, the world's first programmable electronic computer, has just begun operation, targeting the even more complex Lorenz cipher used for highest-level German communications. The scale of the operation has transformed Bletchley Park from a small community of scholars into what can only be described as an intelligence factory. The German naval Enigma, codenamed Shark by the Allies, has been particularly difficult. It uses 4 rotors instead of 3, multiplying the possible settings into astronomical numbers. For 10 months in 1942, Bletchley Park was blind to U-boat communications, unable to break the upgraded cipher. Convoys crossed the Atlantic without knowing where wolf packs waited. Sinkings soared. The blackout ended only with the capture of materials from U-505 in October 1942, when 3 British sailors boarded the sinking submarine in the Mediterranean. 2 of them drowned, but the codebooks they retrieved allowed Bletchley Park to resume reading German naval traffic. Since then, the flow of ultra-intelligence has been continuous. Donitz's orders to his U-boat commanders are decrypted within hours. Allied convoy routing uses this knowledge to avoid known submarine positions. Hunter-killer groups are vectored toward U-boat refueling points. The Germans suspect nothing. They believe Enigma is unbreakable. This is the secret that Captain Gallery has unwittingly endangered. The cryptographic materials from U-505 are rushed to Bermuda aboard the destroyer escort USS Jenks, which races ahead of the slowly towing task group. The documents and Enigma machines arrive in Washington first, where American cryptanalysts examine them with feverish intensity. Then, everything is packed for immediate shipment to Britain. The materials arrive at Bletchley Park on June 20th, 16 days after the capture. British intelligence officers catalog the haul with meticulous care. The Enigma machine is of the latest M4 type. The codebooks include current June settings that confirm the accuracy of Bletchley Park's existing decrypts. More valuable are the Kurd signal books, which provide insight into the abbreviated signal system that has caused persistent difficulties. There are also new documents previously unknown to Allied analysts, including detailed chart overlays that reveal how the Germans organize their operational areas at sea. The assessment from Bletchley Park is both relieved and excited. The captured materials confirm that British code-breaking efforts are on the right track. No unexpected changes to Enigma procedures appear in the documents. The June settings will only remain valid until the end of the month, limiting their immediate operational value, but the broader intelligence is significant. The Allies can now decrypt U-boat traffic with even greater speed and confidence. Most importantly, there is no indication that the Germans suspect a compromise. The crew of U-505 believes their submarine sank. German naval intelligence will mark the boat as lost with all hands. The secret remains safe. Yet the British reaction is not celebratory. It is characterized by intense anxiety and an overwhelming emphasis on security. High-ranking officials understand how close the capture came to disaster. If the Germans had learned of it in early June, just as Operation Overlord was launching, the consequences would have been catastrophic. Even now, months after the Normandy landings have succeeded, the danger persists. If word of the capture leaks, if the crew of U-505 somehow communicates their survival, if German intelligence pieces together what happened, the entire ultra-advantage could evaporate. British intelligence therefore insists on the most extreme measures to maintain secrecy. The 58 surviving crew members of U-505 are segregated from all other prisoners of war. They are transported in secret to Camp Ruston, a remote prisoner of war facility near Ruston, Louisiana. There, they are placed in an isolated compound, separated from the thousands of other German prisoners held at the camp. They are not allowed to write letters home. The Red Cross is denied access to them, a clear violation of the Geneva Convention. British intelligence has made clear to American authorities that no chances can be taken. The Kriegsmarine must believe the crew died with their boat. If families in Germany receive letters from Louisiana, If Red Cross reports mention survivors from U-505, German naval intelligence will immediately suspect that Allied forces captured the submarine intact. And if the Germans suspect that, they will change every Enigma setting, every codebook, every encryption procedure. Ultra will go dark. The families of the U-505 crew receive death notices. Mothers and fathers, wives and children are told that their loved ones are lost at sea, casualties of the Atlantic War. This deception will continue for 3 full years. The crew will remain isolated in Louisiana until 1947, 2 years after the war ends in Europe. Only then will they be repatriated to Germany, and only then will their families learn that the men they mourned are alive. British intelligence considers this cruel necessity acceptable. The stakes are too high for sentiment. Every day that Ultra remains operational saves Allied ships, protects convoys, guides attacks on German submarines. The intelligence derived from Bletchley Park shortens the war itself. If maintaining Ultra requires the systematic deception of German families and the indefinite isolation of 58 prisoners, British intelligence accepts that trade without hesitation. Admiral Ernest J. King, the Chief of Naval Operations in Washington, is by temperament a difficult and often angry man. When he learns the full implications of Gallery's capture, his fury is spectacular. King understands what Gallery did not. The captain of the Guadalcanal believed he was performing an intelligence coup, seizing enemy codes that would help win the war. In fact, Gallery nearly destroyed the greatest intelligence advantage the Allies possess. King summons Gallery and threatens him with court-martial. The charges would be endangering Allied security and jeopardizing naval intelligence operations. For a brief period, Gallery's career hangs in the balance. Only the realization that Gallery could not have known about Ultra saves him from formal charges. The Ultra secret is so closely held that even combat commanders are not informed. Gallery had acted in good faith on his own initiative, believing he was helping the war effort. King eventually accepts this explanation, though his anger at the risk remains. The British response to King's fury is more measured but no less serious. Cunningham and other senior British officers acknowledge that Gallery's intentions were good. They also make clear that such an action must never be repeated. Formal protocols are established. Future captures of enemy vessels or cryptographic materials must be coordinated at the highest levels before execution. No commander in the field has the authority to make such decisions independently. The stakes are simply too great. British intelligence has spent 4 years building the Ultra capability, overcoming tremendous technical and organizational challenges, maintaining absolute secrecy while distributing decrypts to commanders who could use them effectively. One impulsive capture by an ambitious captain nearly undid everything. What saves the operation is the combination of rigid secrecy and German complacency. The crew of U-505 vanishes into American captivity without a trace. German naval intelligence marks the submarine as sunk, one more loss in the grinding attrition of the Atlantic War. Dönitz continues sending orders using Enigma encryption, never suspecting that British codebreakers are reading every message. The submarine itself is towed to Bermuda and then hidden there, renamed USS Nemo to disguise its origins. Even within the U.S. Navy, knowledge of the capture is restricted to a tiny circle of officers. The Presidential Unit Citation, eventually awarded to Task Group 22.3, makes no mention of intelligence value. It praises the tactical achievement of boarding and capturing an enemy submarine, but says nothing about codebooks or cipher machines. The intelligence exploitation of U-505 materials continues throughout the summer and fall of 1944. Bletchley Park uses the documents to refine existing decryption techniques and to develop new approaches to stubborn problems in German naval communications. The coordinate code system used by U-boats to report positions has been particularly difficult. The captured materials from U-505 provide partial solutions, allowing American cryptanalysts to occasionally break the special encoding used for latitude and longitude references. This breakthrough enables more precise tracking of U-boat positions, which in turn allows convoy routing officers to guide merchant ships away from danger zones with greater confidence. Hunter-killer groups can be directed to suspected U-boat locations with improved accuracy. The German Navy never discovers what happened. Even after the war ends and Allied intelligence begins carefully releasing information about code-breaking successes, the full story of U-505 remains classified. In May 1945, the U.S. Navy finally announces that an enemy submarine was captured, but reveals nothing about the circumstances, timing, or intelligence value. The submarine is used in a war bond tour, visiting New York, Philadelphia, and Baltimore, where curious civilians can board and inspect the interior. Gallery himself is present at some of these exhibitions. He receives the Navy Distinguished Service Medal for the capture, and the entire task group is awarded the Presidential Unit Citation. Lieutenant Albert David receives the Medal of Honor, the only such decoration awarded for actions in the Atlantic Theater. Gallery is promoted to Rear Admiral and continues his naval career through the 1950s. British intelligence documents released decades later confirm the extraordinary value of maintaining secrecy around the U-505 capture. Internal assessments from 1944 and 1945 emphasize that the successful concealment allowed continued exploitation of German naval communications through the end of the war. The assessments note that German security investigations after the war confirmed they never suspected the capture. German officers interrogated about Enigma security believed until 1945 that the cipher remained unbreakable. They attributed Allied success in the Battle of the Atlantic to direction finding, radar, and other technical advantages, never imagining that their most secret communications were being read in near real time. The broader significance of the U-505 operation lies not in the materials captured, but in what did not happen. The capture did not compromise Ultra. The Germans did not change their codes. The invasion of Normandy proceeded with full intelligence support. The Battle of the Atlantic continued to swing in Allied favor throughout 1944. By the time Germany surrendered in May 1945, U-boat losses had become unsustainable, and the submarine threat had been effectively neutralized. The intelligence derived from Bletchley Park's code-breaking effort had shortened the war by an estimated 2 to 4 years, according to post-war assessments by British intelligence officials. That achievement would have been impossible without absolute secrecy. One leak, one careless disclosure, one enemy suspicion could have ended Ultra overnight. In the decades since the war, historians have debated whether Gallery's capture was reckless or brilliant, whether King's anger was justified, whether the treatment of U-505's crew violated international law. British intelligence documents offer a clear perspective. The capture was valuable but dangerous. The materials seized were useful but not essential. Bletchley Park was already reading German naval codes effectively before U-505 was taken. The codebooks and Enigma machines from the submarine confirmed existing work and filled some gaps, but they did not provide revolutionary breakthroughs. What made the operation significant was not what was gained, but what was nearly lost. The single greatest intelligence advantage of the war hung in the balance for days and weeks after June 4, 1944, dependent entirely on the ability to maintain a secret that dozens of people now shared. The correspondence between Cunningham and King, between British and American intelligence agencies, between Bletchley Park and Washington, reveals the constant tension inherent in Ultra. Intelligence is only valuable if it can be used, but using it risks revealing its source. British intelligence developed elaborate protocols for distributing Ultra decrypts to field commanders while disguising their origin. Decrypted information was often attributed to aerial reconnaissance or captured prisoners to protect the code-breaking secret. Commanders were forbidden from acting on Ultra intelligence alone. They had to establish plausible alternative explanations for their knowledge. The entire system depended on maintaining the fiction that Enigma remained secure. The U-505 capture threatened this delicate structure because it created physical evidence of a compromise. An intact submarine, complete with current codebooks and functioning Enigma machines, in Allied hands was precisely the kind of capture that would immediately alert German security officers. British intelligence understood this danger instantly. Cunningham's cable to King on June 4th reflects that understanding. Every directive that followed, from the routing of the submarine to Bermuda instead of Casablanca, from the isolation of the crew at Camp Ruston to the elaborate deception maintaining they had died, served a single purpose: preventing German intelligence from suspecting what had happened. The success of this deception remains one of the most remarkable intelligence operations of the war. For 3 years, 58 men were kept in complete isolation, unable to communicate with the outside world, while their families believed them dead. For 3 years, a captured submarine sat hidden in Bermuda, studied by Allied engineers and intelligence officers, its existence unknown to the enemy. For 3 years, British and American intelligence agencies maintained operational security around materials that could have ended Ultra if their capture became known. And throughout this period, German submariners continued using Enigma. German admirals continued sending orders via encrypted radio, and Bletchley Park continued reading every message. In the final accounting, what British intelligence said after capturing U-505 can be summed up in a single imperative: silence. Cunningham's cable demanded it. King's threatened court-martial enforced it. The isolation of U-505's crew guaranteed it. The renaming of the submarine to USS Nemo symbolized it. From the highest levels of Allied command to the individual sailors who participated in the boarding, everyone involved was ordered to maintain complete secrecy. No public statements, no private discussions, no letters home mentioning what had been accomplished. The message from British intelligence was unambiguous and absolute. This capture never happened. This submarine does not exist. These prisoners are not alive, and if anyone speaks of it, the consequences for the war effort will be catastrophic. That message was delivered forcefully and repeatedly in the weeks and months following June 4th, 1944. Gallery and his entire task group were sworn to secrecy. The crew of U-505 was isolated under armed guard. American naval intelligence was ordered to treat all captured materials with extraordinary care. And Bletchley Park continued its work, testing the captured codebooks against existing decrypts, confirming that German security procedures had not changed, monitoring for any sign that the enemy suspected a compromise. The work was meticulous, exhaustive, and entirely invisible to the outside world. On June 19, 1944, 15 days after the capture, U-505 enters Port Royal Bay in Bermuda after a tow of 1,700 nautical miles. A huge American flag flies above a small German naval ensign on the submarine's tower, a symbolic reversal of fortunes. But there are no crowds to witness the arrival, no press coverage, no public celebration. The submarine is immediately painted to resemble an American vessel and given the cover name USS Nemo. Navy intelligence officers swarm over it, documenting every detail. The 58 prisoners are already locked away in Louisiana. The captured documents are on their way to Bletchley Park, and the war continues, with German U-boats still prowling the Atlantic, still using Enigma codes they believe are unbreakable, never knowing that their enemies are reading every transmission. The story of U-505 becomes a parable about the nature of intelligence work in modern warfare. Technical collection, cryptanalysis, and signal interception can provide extraordinary advantages, but those advantages are worthless if the enemy knows they exist. Security becomes as important as collection. Deception becomes as critical as decryption. The ability to keep secrets determines whether intelligence has value. British intelligence understood this principle completely. Their reaction to the U-505 capture demonstrated that understanding. Cunningham's urgent cable, the extreme measures to hide the crew, the careful exploitation of captured materials without compromising their source, all these actions reflected a sophisticated grasp of intelligence security. The legacy of British intelligence's response to U-505 extends far beyond World War II. The principles established during this operation about protecting sources, maintaining operational security, and coordinating sensitive intelligence activities became foundations of post-war intelligence organizations. The Government Code and Cipher School evolved into GCHQ, Britain's Signals Intelligence Agency, which continues Bletchley Park's mission in the modern era. The lessons learned from Ultra, including the near disaster of the U-505 capture, shaped how intelligence agencies operate, how they safeguard sensitive information, and how they balance the imperative to use intelligence against the need to protect its origin. Today, U-505 sits in the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago, where over 500,000 visitors tour it each year. The submarine was donated to the museum in 1954 after the Navy considered using it for target practice. Gallery, by then a rear admiral, helped arrange the donation to honor his hometown. The submarine was brought through the St. Lawrence Seaway across the Great Lakes and installed at the museum in a massive undertaking that required moving a vessel weighing as much as 3 Statues of Liberty across city streets. Inside the submarine, visitors can see the cramped quarters where 54 men lived for months at a time, the torpedo tubes they used to attack Allied shipping, the control room where emergency surfacing procedures were executed on June 4, 1944. And in glass cases nearby, they can see an Enigma machine, one of the cipher devices that nearly changed the course of the war. But visitors rarely learn the full story of what British intelligence said and did after the capture. They rarely hear about Cunningham's urgent cable, about King's threat of court-martial, about the 3-year isolation of the German crew, about the desperate measures taken to prevent the Germans from suspecting a compromise. These details remained classified long after the submarine became a museum piece. The ultra-secret itself was not revealed until 1974, 30 years after the war ended, when former intelligence officer Frederick Winter-Botham published his memoir, The Ultra-Secret. Only then did the public begin to understand the scale and significance of Allied code-breaking efforts and the extraordinary lengths taken to protect them. The capture of U-505 stands as a turning point not because of what was gained, but because of what was nearly lost. The intelligence value of the captured materials was modest. Bletchley Park was already successfully breaking German naval codes. The submarine itself, while interesting from a technical standpoint, revealed no revolutionary capabilities. What made the operation historically significant was the risk it posed to Ultra and the response that risk provoked from British intelligence. In that moment on June 4, 1944, as Gallery's boarding party scrambled through U-505's interior gathering codebooks and cipher machines, the entire Allied intelligence apparatus held its breath. If the Germans discovered the capture, 4 years of patient code-breaking work would evaporate. If the secret held, the war could continue with the greatest intelligence advantage in military history intact. The secret held. British intelligence made certain of it through insistent cables from admirals, through the isolation of prisoners, through careful exploitation of captured materials, through rigid enforcement of security protocols. And in holding that secret, they preserved Ultra for the final year of the war, maintaining the intelligence edge that helped ensure Allied victory. The words, "British intelligence said," after capturing U-505 were few and forceful. Maintain absolute secrecy, isolate the prisoners, hide the submarine, use the intelligence carefully, tell no one. In those simple imperatives lay the difference between victory and catastrophe, between preserving the war's greatest secret and watching it crumble into useless knowledge that the enemy knew was compromised. British intelligence chose silence, enforced it ruthlessly, and by that silence helped win the war. The sun hammers down on Tony Roma's restaurant parking lot like a judge's gavel. Frank Lefty Rosenthal slides into his Cadillac Eldorado, the leather seats still cool from the desert morning. He turns the key. The engine purrs. For a man who has spent 2 decades threading needles between mobsters and money, between the FBI and the Chicago outfit, between survival and death, this moment feels ordinary, normal, safe. Then the world explodes. Metal tears apart like paper. Fire blooms upward in an orange fist. The blast lifts the vehicle 6 inches off the asphalt, shattering windows across the parking lot, sending black smoke spiraling into the Nevada sky like a funeral pyre. Witnesses rush forward expecting to find a corpse. Instead, they find Lefty crawling from the wreckage, his clothes singed, his hair smoking, his face marked with burns and confusion. The bomb was sophisticated, military-grade, planted beneath the driver's seat with precision timing. It should have killed him. It was designed to kill him, but a metal plate installed under the seat as part of the car's customization deflected just enough of the blast to spare his life. Lefty stumbles onto the pavement, alive against all odds, alive against the will of whoever planted that device, alive because fate or fortune or something darker intervened. The paramedics arrive, the police arrive. The questions begin. Who did this? Why now? And the most important question of all, the one that will only be answered decades later. Why did Frank Rosenthal, a man who allegedly oversaw millions in stolen mob money, never face federal charges for his crimes? The story doesn't begin in that parking lot. It begins 30 years earlier, in the streets of Chicago, where a Jewish kid with a genius for numbers learns that gambling isn't just about luck. It's about mathematics. It's about reading the odds better than anyone else in the room. Frank Lawrence Rosenthal is born in 1929, the son of a produce wholesaler, growing up in a city where organized crime isn't an abstract concept, but the invisible government that runs everything from construction to politics to the flow of liquor and money. Chicago in the 1940s and 1950s is a machine, and the outfit is the oil that keeps it running. Young Lefty shows an uncanny ability to handicap sports, to calculate probabilities in his head faster than bookies with calculators, to turn information into profit. By his 20s, he's already a name in Chicago gambling circles, a professional handicapper who can pick winners with disturbing accuracy. But talent draws attention. And attention in Chicago means you either work for the outfit or you work against them. And working against them isn't really an option if you want to keep breathing. Lefty begins taking bets, moving money, becoming part of the machinery. He's smart enough to know his place, careful enough to avoid stepping on the wrong toes, ambitious enough to want more. The outfit bosses notice. They see a young man who understands numbers, who can be trusted with money, who has the discipline to keep his mouth shut. These are rare qualities in a world where most men talk too much or steal too openly or let ego destroy them. Then comes the moment that changes everything. In 1960, Lefty gets busted in a major college basketball point-shaving scandal involving North Carolina State University. The authorities allege he was paying players to control the spread of games, manipulating outcomes to guarantee profitable bets. It's a serious charge, the kind that could send him to prison for years, the kind that would normally destroy a gambling career. But Lefty is represented by Oscar Goodman, a brilliant defense attorney who will later become the mayor of Las Vegas, and the case falls apart. The charges are reduced. Lefty walks away with probation. The experience teaches him 2 critical lessons. First, that having the right lawyer is as important as having the right alibi. And second, that federal investigators are watching him, cataloging his movements, building files that will follow him for the rest of his life.